Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Outriders, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Google Stadia, and PC. Outriders is a co-op third-person looter shooter where you can play with up to 2 different people, putting yourself in a 3-person PvE experience. Instead of just being some random hunter on an alien planet trying to get the best gears and guns, this game focuses not only on the gunplay, but also the fact that your character, either handcrafted or randomized, though the character creation options aren't that plentiful, you can't really adjust the faces, you can't even change the name or the voice of your picked character. But after you create your character and go through the prologue, which is about a half an hour to 45 minutes, you're able to pick one of 4 powered classes. There's the Pyromancer, which is a mid-range attacker that controls fire. You can do things like send a wave of fire towards your enemies, or even use it as something of a spear, like Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. There's the Trickster that is able to manipulate time, such as slow down an area of time in a dome, or being able to teleport behind an enemy for an instant one hit kill if you time it properly. There's the Devastator, which is the equivalent of the tank, the character that can take a lot of damage and give a lot back. The Devastator's attacks are based around the Earth, and being able to create things like seismic earthquakes, and jumping and doing devastating stomps, all the while being able to armor themselves with the actual ground around them. The Technomancer is a long-range fighter, such as being able to call a turret that actually freezes enemies when it connects. That of course makes it easier for the player to kill that enemy. The interesting fact about the classes and the overall gameplay is the fact that there is no regenerative health in the same sense that you would expect it. You can't use the game's cover system, which works similar to Gears of War. Maybe not as tight and as fluid, but it does work similar to Gears of War, and regenerate your health by sitting back and waiting for the enemies to miss a whole bunch of shots. Instead, you have to be proactive and utilize your skills to be able to regenerate your health. So, if you say set an enemy on fire and kill them, as a Pyromancer, you'll be able to regenerate your health. All the characters, the Devastator, the Trickster, and the Pyromancer depend on essentially killing your enemy to regenerate health, whereas the weaker Technomancer just has to do damage. Of course, doesn't have as much HP as their counterparts. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, and you have to take your time, be a little bit more patient with the Technomancer than say with the Trickster, the Pyromancer, or the Devastator. For me personally, I enjoy playing as the Trickster more than any other character. Another thing that makes this game unique is the world tier system. The world tier system is essentially the game's difficulty settings. And as you defeat more enemies, complete missions, the tier system starts to increase. So this allows for the game not only to get harder, but you also get better rewards, better loot, better experience if you decide to go higher with the tiers that are advancing. Now the player can go back to tier 1 if they want to, have it on the easiest setting, play through the story, and not worry about the loot. But if you want to get the best loot, if you want to get the best gear, more than likely you will have to have the higher tier. The game shows that you can get up to tier 15, which I don't know how crazy that's going to be, because there is a big difference between tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4. So it was a nice little challenge to see how well I could prioritize my skills and figure out what I could do to advance and do better in these specific tiers. But it also was very noticeable that certain tiers, the higher the level, the more the game wants you to play with someone else. The numbers are so overwhelming that it may be difficult for solo players to play the higher tiers. One thing I really didn't talk about, because I didn't understand it and we didn't get that much when it came to the demo, is resistances and status effects when it comes to not only your character, but also enemies, specifically the elite enemies or the bosses. Now certain weapons that can be modded or picked up with already having mods, like being able to make someone bleed when they're running around or toxify and poison them, can also be inflicted on the elite or boss enemies. But the resistance meter that sits beside their name and their health bar actually fills up the more you attack them with those certain elements or status effects. And since status effects can't stack in this game, be it with mods or when you're actually dealing damage to an enemy, it's only effective for a short period of time. And once that resistance meter fills up, the enemy actually becomes resistant completely to whatever you're shooting them with. So then you just have to switch to regular lead. And this also applies to your powered attacks, especially against elite enemies, because if they become resistant to, say, the Pyromancer's fire attacks, then the Pyromancer's special abilities will not work. As I mentioned, mods are a big thing when it comes to this game that I really didn't know about when it came to the demo because we didn't have that availability, but now that I see, it is huge. You can actually dismantle weapons and armor to learn the recipes for these mods, and you can implement these mods on whatever applicable item there is that you have in your inventory. Now, it may seem like the smartest thing to do is to scrap every item that you have that's not necessary anymore, but what really is important is to look and see if you have that mod indicated by the square icon beside the description of whatever mod that is, and then scrap the item or sell it depending on the quality. So you can ensure that you have all the mods that are possible, because certain mods will be incredibly helpful depending on what firefight you're in the middle of. And as you progress through the game, as you level up, as your weapons level up, certain weapons become pretty much useless when it comes to dealing damage and effectiveness, but the mod themselves will never decay. So as long as you have that mod on there, you can add it to an even more powerful weapon and have the best of both worlds. A new, more powerful weapon with a great mod that you've had for a long time. But looking through the skill tree, it's based on increasing the base stats of things like your health, your abilities, effectiveness, and the like. Nothing extraordinary, but it's a grandiose skill tree. Another grinding aspect that I noticed about the game, as I mentioned with the missions, whereas the main missions are only able to be played once, the side missions, which are usually go here, kill a couple of enemies, rescue someone, or what have you, can be replayed, because each side mission has up to 3 rewards, and you only can pick one per successful side mission. So if you want to get all 3 rewards, then you have to replay these missions. One thing that must be noted when it comes to side missions in the full game, that they're definitely a lot more fleshed out when it comes to a narrative presentation, even if it's a very isolated one. Like, say, running into a cult inside of a volcano. From a narrative perspective, the game is set in the world of Enoch, an alien planet after humanity has ruined Earth, and now they're trying to find another world to inhabit. But of course, nothing goes right, and this leads to what we have now with Outriders. From a narrative perspective, the game isn't that profound from what I've seen thus far. It's pretty much paint by the numbers. There's a little humor here and there, especially with the protagonist, but other than that, it takes itself really seriously. It's not like you're gonna get this Borderlands experience when it comes to the overall story. This game has a drop-in, drop-out feature. You can join a game at any time, drop out of a game at any time, and get experience points depending on what level you're playing as. The hosting game is the one that you'll be stuck at, so it's up to them to decide about the world tiers. Unlike the demo where there weren't as many people playing, the servers were really in bad shape the first few days. It really wasn't around Sunday where the game was stable enough that I could get into a game at any point in time. Unfortunately, crossplay, which was a big promotional point, isn't active at this time because it's causing a lot of crashes. This is one of those online-only experiences that once again suffers from the fact that it is online only. Even if you're playing by yourself, you have to be connected to the servers. So if the servers are down, you can't play it. There's no offline option, which I think is really silly, especially in this day and age. There are little things here and there like accolades that you can get to increase your emotes or your customization options that have nothing to do with the gameplay but are more just cosmetic features. There are also vehicle customization options for the Land Rover that you use to traverse from one main hub to another. You're not able to actually drive it like, say, in Mass Effect. I also noticed that from a performance perspective, it was okay. It had a few frame rate drops here and there. It doesn't look the best, but mostly because this is a cross-generational game. Overall, like I said about Outriders when I reviewed the demo, this doesn't set the world on fire. It doesn't do too many extraordinary things outside of, say, the world tier system, the way it handles status effects and mods. but it's still such an enjoyably good time. It's one of those experiences that once you get in, once you get gunning, once you get into a groove, it's hard to stop, especially when you're trying to challenge yourself and see how well you can do in the world tier system. If this is your type of game, if you love superpowered looter shooters from a third-person perspective, if you like co-op multiplayer, if you just enjoy the idea of getting the best gear and loot possible, this game has it all when it comes to that. But there are issues at this time when it comes to matchmaking, when it comes to setting up games online, when it comes to server stability, and it makes it one of those games that definitely is worth a buy down the road, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a month, just to ensure that you get the best experience possible, because by then they will have the chance to iron out all the issues, the player base won't be as strenuous on the servers, and hopefully you can enjoy a whole day of gaming without the servers dropping or losing connection with your friends when you're in the middle of a firefight. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Outriders for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Google Stadia, and PC. Now, if you don't mind, I'm in the heart of a volcano, and a gigantic lava-spewing arachnid has spotted me. Now, if I'm not careful, I could be turned into ash, but if I am, I can overcome and make that lava-spewing spider cry out, "Oh, Lordy!"